Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my colleagues for such a warm reception. I'm pleased to stand in this House and speak to Bill C-52, an act to amend the Canada Transportation Act. This has been an act, well, certainly this topic has been a very important one for my constituents, for people across rural and particularly Western Canada. And before I go further, I also want to acknowledge the hard work of my colleague, the MP for Trinity Spadina, who for years has been a real advocate when it comes to fairness in the transportation industry, and has worked very hard on reforming this act in particular, and really bringing forward the NDP position, which is fundamentally a position of seeking fairness and seeking a fair playing field for those that depend on rail service as part of their work, as part of their business, as part of their industry, and of course, very importantly, the communities that depend on fair rail service and making sure that their employers and that their industries are dealt with appropriately. We in the NDP have made it clear that we are supporting this bill at this point, but we do believe that it must it must be strengthened as we go forward, and we're not pleased with the delays that this government has allowed for, and also the kind of cowering we've seen from the government, which is not a surprise, to major corporate interests in this field. As we know, this bill gives rail freight customers or shippers the right to service agreements with rail companies. It also puts in place a Canadian Transportation Agency-led arbitration process for failed negotiations and penalties for those that violate the arbitration results. Key amendments that the shipping community pushed for and that were championed by the NDP, unfortunately, were defeated in the committee. Without these rejected amendments, the bill, we believe, remains a partial success for the shippers, and we believe that in the future it must be strengthened. It is important that we indicate indicate to stakeholders and very importantly to this government that this isn't a done deal, that as in anything, but particularly when we're talking about this area, this act needs to be further strengthened. Bill C-52, we find, partially addresses the fact that rail freight customers, known as shippers, have been suffering from insufficient freight services stemming from the abuse of market power by the large rail companies. The Conservative government has finally tabled legislation after years of talking and inaction to address the fact that many shippers cannot even get a service agreement as rail companies haven't been willing to negotiate. As the bill covers only new service agreements, current agreements and contract violations, a major source of revenue loss for shippers, which are all a major source, of revenue loss for shippers, they are not affected by Bill C-52. And in saying that, certainly in terms of the stakeholders that have been involved, I would like to read into the record some of the stakeholders that have spoken out in support of the NDP broader position, which is that this act must be strengthened. And I recognize that this act has been very much the wish for it to be strengthened has come in large part from people that work in the mining industry. And as someone representing an area that depends on mining, and as somebody who's proud to say that I come from and I live in a mining town, I recognize that in order to ship the ore and ship the goods that are needed from the mining industry to both do its job and to export its product, fair mining services, fair rail services are essential. So I want to recognize that the Mining Association of Canada, as represented by Pierre Graton, indicated quote, although the Mining Association of Canada appreciates the government's initiative through Bill C-52, it is our view that the bill, unless amended, will not deliver on the government's promise to enhance the effectiveness, efficiency, and reliability of the entire rail freight supply chain. Coming from Western Canada, I share with many colleagues of mine from Western Canada the understanding and the clear recognition of the importance of agriculture in our region, and particularly agriculture when it comes to grain production. So I want to indicate the message that was brought forward by the Grain Growers of Canada, as represented by Richard Phillips, who noted, I think what we're looking at here is the level of service and timelines of service to meet our sales commitments. That's what we're really talking about. When Pulse Canada was down in Colombia and we just signed a deal there, we were looking forward to increased exports to Colombia. And the Colombians said they weren't sure they'd actually buy anything more from us because they couldn't get reliable enough delivery of product on time. So clearly a concern around our ability to export, clearly serious concerns brought forward by our clients when it comes to reliability and timelines around exports of a fundamental product, which is grain. And we believe, Mr. Speaker, that is unacceptable and a clear indication of why it is absolutely essential that that we not see this as a done deal as such, but that we understand that this is something that needs to go forward, that we must continue to listen to stakeholders and seek a truly fair system when it comes to the rail service that is provided in this country. I also want to, as somebody who's proud to come from Western Canada, I want to read into the record the words of the Western Canadian Shippers Coalition, as represented by Ian May, who noted, since the government committed to the legislation, we've heard that service has improved. I can tell you that it hasn't. I can tell you that as recently as 2 weeks ago, we had mills just about to shut down because they couldn't get boxcars in Western Canada, and not just one. Whether that's coincidental with a broader understanding of Bill C-52, and perhaps the fact that it is balanced versus a shipper's bill that would have leveled the playing field. And that's our language. I don't know, he mentions. So again, this problematic situation that, in this case, the Western Canadian Shippers Coalition, a very inclusive coalition, one that has a great deal of clout in Western Canada, is clearly stating that this bill does not go far enough, that there are serious problems in the kind of rail service, the rail service that is provided, and that they're getting a raw deal. And that concerns me a great deal, Mr. Speaker, because in the last few years, certainly since I've had the honour of being a Member of Parliament for Northern Manitoba, it is clear to me day by day in the way in which people in my part of the country are in fact getting a raw deal from this government. I want to indicate the cutbacks to Via Rail, for example, that have directly impacted and will continue as tourism picks up in the summer. The people of Northern Manitoba, those that live on the Bay Line and in Churchill, and that depend on reliable, quality rail service provided by Via Rail. I also want to indicate the lack of imagination and certainly commitment to another transportation hub, which is the Port of Churchill, which is truly a gateway to Arctic trade and certainly seen as something that is a gateway of opportunity, not just for Manitoba, but also for all of Canada. And yet this government has squandered opportunities to truly make investments. And of course, the gutting of the Canadian Wheat Board, as we knew it, played a key role in setting us, played a major role in setting us back. And as we know from last year, the shipments through the Port of Churchill are nowhere near where they ought to be. I also want to indicate this government's failure to invest in an all-weather road network across northern Manitoba, something that could bring a great deal increase the level of quality of life that many First Nations and Métis people have in that part of the country, and also the kind of economic development opportunities. Again, time after time, we're seeing a government be short-sighted towards the interests of northern, rural, Western Canadians. We see it in this bill that must go further, and I agree with my colleagues. Canadians, Western Canadians, Northern Canadians, and rural Canadians deserve far better. Thank you. Bravo.